What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. A lot of activity for Arkansas in the transfer portal as it pertains to football. A little bad, a lot of good. We're going to get into all of that. Danny West is also going to join us to talk a little bit about baseball, a little bit of recruiting, also dive into the transfer portal, all that and more on Hog Sports Live. And before we get started, I want to remind you, of course, there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always tune in on Facebook Live. Be sure to follow the page if you haven't done so already. Like this video if you like the content we're producing. Also available on YouTube. Throw us a thumbs up there. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications bell so you're notified anytime we upload new videos. Also on Apple Podcasts. We'd love to have a 5-star rating from you. So if you take a minute before this show starts or after, just give us a 5-star rating if you like the content. And grassroots it for us. Help other people know what to expect. Share it with your dad, your granddad, your mom, whoever you think might like the video that might not be aware of it. Also available on Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere else you can think of to find your favorite podcast. Okay. So a lot of activity for Arkansas, obviously, in the transfer portal. We're going to talk about some of that. The first bit of bad news came with Enoch Jackson. Now, with Enoch, that's a kind of a different situation than we're going to talk about with Mike Woods because, you know, Enoch wasn't really factoring in a whole lot of playing time. We knew that Arkansas was interested in adding more defensive tackles also. So he was a little bit farther back. You know, Enoch's got a chance, I think, to have success on the collegiate level. But he is a little bit limited from a size standpoint, not weight. I mean, he weighs almost 300 pounds, but, you know, he's probably about 6 foot tall, probably right around the same height as I am, actually. So he's limited in that capacity. And if you're going to be, you know, a smaller defensive tackle, you need to be electric quick. You know, you got to be able to make up for it a little bit. And again, I think Enoch can play on the collegiate level and contribute for a team, but maybe it was in his best interest to seek playing time somewhere else. So the next bit of bad news came with Mike Woods, and this one really did sting. Now, I'm not in agreement with people that are trashing Mike Woods, okay? Can you be disappointed? Absolutely. You absolutely should be disappointed if you're a Razorback fan. Can you also wish him well and move on? Yes, you can. You can do both of those things. So this absolutely stings Arkansas from a personnel and perception standpoint, okay? So don't mistake that. Like, there's a lot of people out there that say stuff like, you know, business is business, or this it's not personal, it's just business. Business is personal. Whoever came up with that phrase that it's business is not personal wasn't on the other end of it getting it. You know, it was the guy that was firing somebody or something like that. And just because you say business is business doesn't mean that business is business. You know, just like Jerry Seinfeld. So I had a chance to see Jerry Seinfeld right before the pandemic started up in New York. Me and my wife went for our 10th anniversary. So he had a great bit, and it's on Netflix now. It's like 23 hours to kill. But he had a great bit saying just because you repeat the same word in a sentence, it makes it sound more important. Business is business, he said. A deal's a deal. What's done is done. If you can't, you can't. When we go there, as long as we know what's what and who's who, whatever happens, happens, and what it is what it is. Just because you say business is business doesn't mean it's like different. I mean, business is very personal, okay? And you can absolutely be disappointed in Mike Woods' decision. But should Mike Woods do what's best for him, what he feels is best for him? Absolutely. Is it just affecting Mike Woods? No, it's not. It's affecting Razorback fans who have followed and cheered for him and have been behind him. And yeah, so you can be disappointed in that. And, you know, I mentioned the personnel standpoint. I think Arkansas can make up for that. They have recruited well at wide receiver. The perception standpoint of it is different. And so to act like it's just, you know, Mike Woods going to Oklahoma and, you know, enter the transfer portal and go to Oklahoma, so just act like it's just like that and it doesn't affect anything else is not accurate, because my initial impression was, what happened? Is there something off the field? I can understand, you know, if something off the field. On the field, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. He's a number 2 wide receiver. Is there something wrong with Kenny Guyton? Something wrong with Sam Pittman? Sam Pittman's culture not right? Not what we thought it was? You know, asking all those questions. So from a perception standpoint, it's a negative, I think. You know, Mike was 13th in the SEC in receptions last year. And I ticked off a lot of OU fans, and guys, I appreciate your passion. I do. But I haven't said anything other than all I heard was, I mean, to paraphrase, like, not looking good on Mike Wood. Mike Wood's going to enter the transfer portal later that day. This is on Monday, the 19th. Not looking good. OU is the rumor. This is the 19th before he entered the portal. I'm not saying there's anybody tampering or anything, or that, any coaches or anything like that did that. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen behind the scenes with, players talking, high school friends. Mike's from Big 12 region. All kinds of things like that can happen. So I'm not saying like there's any tampering, but I am saying, yeah, it's wild. The only team that I heard that he was going to that was in the mix was OU before he entered the portal. So that's all I said. So the optics of it, feel bad and all that stuff. Does it make you hypocritical sometimes? Yeah, sports fans are very hypocritical. I mean, it's sports. That's your team. This is my team. That kind of situation. And can you be mad at Mike Woods, but also still accepting of Arkansas's latest additions? Yeah, because sports fans are hypocritical. Particularly Markel Utsi, who comes to Arkansas from Missouri. Now, Utsi, let's go ahead and get into that. We'll move on past the Mike Woods stuff. But yeah, it's disappointing to lose Mike Woods. Wish him well. Don't agree with people saying, just dogging him out. Mike Woods isn't a quitter. Yes. Did he leave his team? Is Arkansas a place that invested a lot into him? Yes. Arkansas gave him a lot, and he gave Arkansas a lot, and it just kind of stinks at the same time and stings that, all that they put in together in, his last year, he's given it to OU. So, yeah, you can be upset with that, guys. It's okay to be upset. But to me, like, you talk about like quitting on your team and stuff, like the time to transfer is the offseason, which is what Mike has done here. And again, it's America. You have the right to do. A wise man once said, if you have the opportunity to sell out, you should sell out. I'm not sure that's totally true, but maybe a little bit. But, the optics of it are the thing that stings the most. But he should absolutely be able to do what he feels is in his best interest, but don't act like other people aren't impacted by it, and it doesn't hurt the team. It doesn't hurt KJ's chances to be good or Pittman's chances to have success. It impacts all that, obviously. He was a clear number 2 wide receiver for Arkansas. So, all right, moving on past that. You lose Mike Woods. You lose Enoch Jackson. One of those really stings. But early Sunday afternoon, Markel Utsi, 6'4", 295, announced his decision to transfer to Arkansas. Now, this is a guy that's back in 2016 class, so he's a 6-year senior. 6'4", 295, defensive tackle who started 8 of 9 games for them last year, went through the spring with them, and, it's kind of a similar situation. Now, I don't think we were like hearing beforehand that, he's definitely going to Arkansas, but he's from Little Rock. He was recruited to Missouri by Barry Odom, who was the head coach there, his first recruiting class in 2016. So it makes a lot of sense that he ended up at Arkansas. And again, a guy who started 8 of 9 games last year that he played in. And then to me, and Utsi's, that's a nice pickup. We know that they wanted to get a defensive tackle, right? We know that they had 2 spots left that they're going to count forward, and they wanted defensive tackle. Nothing was really materializing in the early part of things for the last semester, this semester that's going on right now. So nothing was really materializing, and then you knew that there was going to be another wave of transfers. So the next one, John Ridgeway. Now, this one is a little different to me. He's from Illinois State, so he's transferring up a level. But Arkansas was the first school to offer him. And then it was just, let's see who all came after him. It's an impressive list of offers. Texas, USC, Michigan, Tennessee, Penn State, Iowa, Indiana, Arizona State, and several others. Everybody was interested in this guy. They only played 4 games last year, 22 tackles, 3 sacks. But this guy is 6'6", 325, and you talk about transforming the middle of Arkansas's defense now, and taking a position where you're like, they got a chance. And I wrote an article, just about where Arkansas is at defensive tackles. Like, they might surprise some people here. I think Isaiah Nichols is a little better than people think, nationally. I think, he may have surprised some Arkansas fans and stuff last year, but he really came on, gets off the ball extremely quick. He played at about 281 last year, but he also lined up at defensive end in their 3-man front. I think he started 7 of the 9 games he played last year. But Nichols, he had a foot injury, so he missed the first scrimmage. He had to come out early of the second scrimmage because his foot was bothering him. He didn't play in the red-white scrimmage. But he's trying to get up to about 300 pounds. He's at 293, I think, right now. So he's trying to get up his weight a little bit. But, again, a guy that, flipped back and forth there. But I think a guy like Ridgeway could challenge him. Utsi possibly could too. But, defensive line, defensive tackle, you don't want to play a guy really more than 60% of the snaps. So, as we know in this conference, it's almost as important. Your backups are almost as important as your starters in the SEC, particularly on defense. So, two nice additions there. And, to go with Nichols. Plus, Torien Carter has had a really good spring. He was a guy that Sam Pittman really praised on Wednesday. Now, he got into him for something at the red-white game, but he was really praising him, liked that, his attitude, getting to the front of the line, all that kind of stuff. So, plus you've got Eric Gregory, who we saw in the red-white game when they were in a four-man front, he was sliding in at defensive tackle. So he can play end or tackle for them, kind of a swing guy, and he goes about 298, 300 pounds too, so he's a big guy. So suddenly Arkansas defensive tackle position looks a lot better. But you got some promising guys like Marcus Miller too, Andy Boykin, some other guys like that. But this definitely makes Arkansas feel a lot stronger in the interior. Maybe they say, hey, maybe we can go with a four-man front a little more often when, it looked more like they would definitely be always three-man front because they do have so many safeties. 3-2-6 is what they like to use. So defensive end now, I feel like Arkansas is in really good shape there despite the lack of sacks. They only had 13 sacks last year, but I don't think it's a talent problem so much. I think it's maybe technique. Maybe it was really needed to get Jermile Ashley in here, get somebody else, with a different perspective on things, the guy that played defensive end. But, you've got Zach Williams, who's up to 264, plans to get to about 275 by the time the season starts. All muscle. Zach Williams is suddenly shredded. I remember going to see him in high school, and he's a long, lanky guy who's got a lot of potential, but he is huge. You can see it in his legs, his shoulders. I mean, he has added all good weight. Matteo Soli, and I've talked about Soli a lot as a guy that had 22 and a half sacks as a high school senior and suddenly can't get to the quarterback. Dorian Gerald has just been banged up his whole career, showed up late and out of shape that first year in 2018, ended up starting the last two games, I think, that season, but was overweight. The next year he had that weird injury. And then last year he had an injury early on. But Dorian, I felt like, had a really good spring. Plus, so you've got him and, Eric Gregory kind of as your bigger ends. But now Zach Williams is a guy that's always been the undersized guy. Matteo Soli also. Jashad Stewart was really coming on. He was injured for the red-white game, but he's a guy that's, a little undersized from a height, not particularly long, even for being about 6'2". But just really explosive off the ball, a guy that I think can help him this year. So defensive line looking a little bit better now with these transfer additions, right? Think so. Takias Crawford was also a big one, obviously enrolled early. I think he played in practiced 7 times and then was hurt. I hear he's got a little bit of a shoulder, but then was hurt. But 6'5", 355, a guy that I think is the right tackle of the future for Arkansas, a future starter. Trent Gordon also, 5'11", 195 out of Penn State, who, I don't know that he's pushing any of the starters at nickel or cornerback, but again, a guy that should be able to provide some depth and help them probably in a backup type of role. And then the other guy would be Cade Renfro, who, those of you who watched the spring game, you saw what I saw in Cade Renfro is that he's got a really live arm. And I've seen that all spring. What I had not seen so much, I knew that he was mobile, but he's really mobile. Like, he can really run and help Arkansas, I think. So Renfro joined as a walk-on. He was a scholarship player at Ole Miss, obviously the Kendall Browse connection from having recruited him at Florida State. So that's where that connection comes in. So 5 in, 2 out in the transfer market. I think Arkansas won overall. And as I've said before, the Mike Woods situation, it's more to me the optics of it. And I don't feel like Arkansas is a negative, situation. It might clear that up. It's not Kenny Guyton because people are like, what happened there? Mike cleared all that stuff up. Everything's in good hands at Arkansas and stuff. But, it's kind of like, well, why are you leaving, So, anyway, that's the situation right there with Arkansas's transfer situation. What else we got here? Do I want to get to Danny now? Let me go over this real quick, Danny. I know you might be listening, but I'm going to get to Danny real quick. But what's next for Arkansas football now that spring has wrapped up? So last week and this week currently are what's called discretionary weeks. So, you're expected to get in there, work out 3 days a week. Obviously you've got academics that you got to focus on. The 29th is the last day of classes when this is being recorded, or when you're watching. Today's the 26th. So the 29th. Thursday is the last day of classes, which makes the 30th dead day. For those of you who aren't familiar with dead day, if you're a U of A student, you're familiar with dead day. I don't know if that's something they use at other schools, but they've been using that since '96, since I was in college. But basically that means if you have a lot of stuff to do with finals, then you study, and if you don't, then you go to the lake or you go hiking or something. But that's dead day, so no classes. Then final exams begin on Monday, May 3rd, and run through Friday, May 7th. Okay. During all this time, players still work out if they can and stuff like that, but the primary focus has to be making sure you finish strong in the classroom. So then after that, they will go home. They'll get about 2 weeks to go home if they want. Some of them won't, but go home, get away from football, recharge your battery, spend some time with your family. You really didn't have like spring break. They took spring break and they made 3 long weekends basically. So there was no like opportunity to really just get away for a long time. Even though they took 8 days off in the middle of spring for spring break, they still had classes to go to. So I guess it's good if you got online classes, you could do that. But for the most part, this is their first real good break. And then they'll come back probably around the 24th of May. I think that's also when you'll start seeing some of the guys that have wrapped things up, these transfer additions, those guys start rolling in around that time, and that's when they'll start the summer conditioning cycle, which is voluntary if you want to sit the bench. So everybody will be here for that. And that's where things stand right now. Okay. Let me get to Danny West here. For those of you who are not familiar with Danny West, how are you not familiar with the best recruiting guy in the country? Danny does a great job for us, has for well over a decade. You can follow him, not at this Twitter handle, but at Danny West 247 on Twitter. Puts all his information out there and has done a great job for us for a number of years. Primary football recruiting guy. Curtis Wilkerson mainly handles basketball stuff. So.
Trey Biddy.
How you doing, Danny?
Doing fantastic, buddy. It's about 75 degrees today.
It's a nice
75. Shout out Joe Nichols.
There you go. Shout out Joe. Well, we're just going over the transfer stuff and the good and the bad of it all. Obviously, Arkansas losing Mike Woods, but ended up with some positive additions. Obviously, especially on Sunday here, and I guess 5 total if you count Cade Renfro, who's not on scholarship but played like a scholarship quarterback in the spring. What are your impressions overall on the job that Arkansas has done, particularly yesterday with getting the 2 defensive tackles?
Yesterday was huge. I mean, I think we all expected Markell to make that move. In fact, as soon as he entered the portal, what was that, last week, maybe 10 days ago, I remember I posted on HawgSports. I said, hey, this one, it should move fairly quickly. And, of course, Arkansas obviously is the destination there. But, man, I'm sitting around yesterday evening, and I told you and Curtis this in our group text last night, but that one shocked me, buddy. I had no idea that guy was coming. I mean, I'm sure you've touched on it, but just the amount of blue blood, big-time schools that came after him, after Arkansas, of course. I've seen that movie before. I know how that one typically turns out, but for whatever reason, I kept his tweet notifications on, just trying to keep up with him, and sure enough, man, that one surprised me. But that makes you feel a lot better, boy, about that defensive front. Which,
really does.
I know you always, not always, but here recently, I think you've liked what you saw in the spring out of, Isaiah. He's one that we both really like. I thought Eric Gregory with the versatility there, and he's gotten quite a bit bigger since he got here. So They had some pieces, but now, man, they've really got a shot to be pretty stout up front. And, of course, as you know and everybody listening knows, that's where it starts. So,
right. Well, Torien Carter, too. I mean,
sure.
But the thing of it is, like, with those 3 guys, it's those 3 guys definitely, and it's not like there's not a big push yet from like a Marcus Miller or Andy Boykin, those guys that really haven't like started pushing yet. But these guys have, and I think I love the Uzi addition for them, but the Ridgeway. I mean, I don't know if you checked out his highlights yet, but man, this is a big dude, like 6'6", 325, and you can tell he's every bit of it. And Arkansas is suddenly, I mean, you talk about where you want to be strong, right up the middle of that defense. And now your nose, your linebackers with Grant Morgan up in the middle, and then, Jalen Catalon right in the back end. I mean, that's a stout middle all of a sudden for Arkansas's defense. It's going to make them a lot better.
I agree, and not done yet. It's not complete yet. Cameron Ball still coming in. Solly Wright coming over from Oklahoma. I mean, that's a guy. I don't know about you, but I love that kid's film. I know he's not very big, and he's not like your, no disrespect to Enoch Jackson. We wish him the best of luck, but two totally different players when you talk about being undersized. This guy is extremely explosive. So, it's all about depth.
I made a point about that too, though, Danny. Just like Enoch, I think he can play on the college level, but probably was a good decision by him, to go down a level, because if you are going to be shorter at defensive tackle, you have to be extremely explosive. And Solomon Wright, he has that. He has that level of explosion. It's the same deal at running back. I say that all the time. Like, if you're going to be small at running back, you need to be elite speed and quickness. You can't just be kind of fast, And it's the same at defensive tackle, really probably any position. So, switching over. Go ahead, Danny.
I was just going to add real quickly that, we talk so much, and rightfully so with two additions here, but, man, I kind of like those defensive ends. Zach Williams, to me, has been – I mean, what a jump that guy's made physically. I mean, I remember I went and checked out our sit-down interview when he was just committed to Arkansas, and – not that he looked bad, but you knew at some point that's going to be a really big man. Well, he's reached that now. That is a big old boy now.
I mean, he played in the 240 range last year and was 225, 230 or something the year before that, and now it's 264. Good. And like I said, Danny, I had a chance to see him up close the other day, and he didn't physically look like the same guy. I mean, just like – when you like Alabama players, like you see Alabama players, you're like, man, the shoulders on these guys, And Zach kind of has those shoulders now, just big balls up on the sides of his arms. I mean, just he and his legs are just. I mean, he looks like they're supposed to look right now.
Yeah,
so
he does.
I think he could have a big season. And I've said this before too with Dorian. Dorian has so much potential. He's just got to stay healthy. But I feel like he's had a really strong spring also. So
nobody deserves it more,
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember a couple years ago when Armon Watts just came out of nowhere finally as a senior. Wouldn't that be something for DG to come back and do that? Nobody deserves it more.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, Danny, flipping you over to the high school ranks, we touched a little bit on some of the high school guys that are coming in, but who could commit next? You had a recent story, and I don't obviously want you to give the farm away, but
sure.
Let's touch on that a little bit.
I advise against giving the farm away for sure.
By the way, if you want to sign up at HawgSports.com and read the VIP recruiting stuff, it's just $1 right now for your first month. HawgSports.com. No promo code needed. And most of his content is VIP. So if you like Danny West stuff, you'll need a VIP membership. But just $1 right now.
Not bad. Yeah, you mentioned the story there. I think it's always fun to kind of update after they get a couple of commitments. And, of course, yesterday had nothing really to do with the class of 2022, but it was a timely story, I would say. A lot of people seem to be enjoying it. Just kind of 6 guys, I think, that, I'm really keeping an eye on right now. And, of course, I share a little bit here. I think all eyes right now are on the couple of in-state guys, with Amarion Harris, 4-star offensive lineman out of Joe T. Robinson. It wouldn't surprise me, Trey, if he's getting pretty close. I think Arkansas has made him a real priority for a long time now. We know Missouri and Oklahoma have done the same, but when you look at Arkansas's history at that school in particular, they keep them at home just about every time they offer one. I think I can't recall one that they've missed on at Robinson. So I like the history there. I like that Amarion has kind of played it close to his chest or vest, however you want to put that. But he's been low key about it, hasn't put a whole lot out there, but from everything I'm told, I think Arkansas is in a really, really good spot there. Then Charles Nimrod.
Hey, Danny, I want to say this real quick though, because you made a good point there. You just kind of glossed over it, but we talk about like the state's top producers of talent and stuff, and Robinson has been that. The last 6 years or so, they've been one of the top talent producers. Yeah, probably since Coylan and T.J. Hammonds, those guys. But they're batting 1,000 at Joe T. They're batting 1,000 on all those guys that they offered. They are batting 1,000 at Joe T. Robinson. Pretty significant. All right, go ahead, Danny.
Especially when you think about some of the offer lists at that school. Some of those guys, TJ and Coylan, had a lot of offers, several of them.
Yep.
And you're right there. They've done a really good job there. But I was going to talk about Charles Nimrod, the receiver. Obviously, you picked up Quincy McAdoo a couple of weeks ago. That was really key to get Kenny Guyton's class started. And now I think you kind of turn the focus a little bit to Nimrod. He's really speedy, 6'3", 175. I think he's got a lot of potential. I'm not sure he's tapped into that yet completely, but pretty good player. So, it's easy to start with the in-state guys, but I definitely think a lot of emphasis right now.
Who else is on Nimrod at Illinois? And
Kansas is up there for him. He's kind of got some of those mid-range type Power 5 offers.
You definitely got some connections there at Illinois with Brett Bielema and George Mcdonald is the wide receivers coach there. If you remember,
forgot about that.
George Mcdonald, who had a sip of coffee at Arkansas.
Yeah, he spent a week here or so.
Yeah.
He visited. Pulling for Coach B up there. I know he's done a really good job within his state as well.
Hey, and the lawsuit's settled also.
It's about time. I think if you're like me, and I think I can't speak for you, but I think you still like Coach B. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like as a dude, he's a good dude. He's just a lot of people hate him. The whole lawsuit thing. Let's get over it, man. It's paid for. It's done. Move on.
I mean, it's the same thing with Sam Pittman if things go poorly here, which I like the culture that Sam Pittman has brought, but I will always be a Sam Pittman fan.
Absolutely.
So regardless of what he does on the field.
Yeah, totally agree. But just kind of a general thought on the class here, Trey. I really like where they're at. Number 13 in the country. Here towards the end of April, number 6 in the SEC. That's by far, in terms of the end of April, the highest I've ever seen them. So does that mean they're going to finish there or, top 10 or even 15? No, it doesn't. Obviously, there's a long way to go, but
let's
this
enjoy
is probably it's the best case scenario for you right now. It's kind of been a weird class, to be honest with you, in terms of, you think about the movie. You remember George Clooney in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, when he talked about a geographical oddity. That's kind of what this class is to me. I mean, you got a guy from Michigan, South Carolina. You got a guy coming in here for an official from Canton, Ohio, here in a couple weeks. You're coming off a day yesterday. You got one from Illinois State. I mean, they're just all over the map. And it's been enjoyable. It's always fun for me to kind of see what every new year is going to bring in terms of geography. It started with Coach B when we saw the Florida connections, and Coach Morris gets here. You got a little bit of Tennessee and East Texas, obviously. Coach Pittman got off to a hot start in Oklahoma, and now it's just scattered. So you never know where they're coming from at this point.
I've got that Soggy Bottom Boys song in my head now. Danny.
You are welcome.
I am the man. All right. That's about the most singing that anybody's going to get out of me. Tyrus Washington is another guy that you had mentioned. You got, this is a pretty extensive list of possibilities to jump on board, but we'll wrap it up a little bit right there. That you mentioned a couple of key targets there. I wanted to jump over for you with anybody who wants to continue reading. Danny's got a full article on guys to watch up next. But I wanted to flip you over to baseball right now. Arkansas, number 1 team in the country, number 1 power rankings in the SEC, just won the series at South Carolina. What are you thinking about this baseball team right now? It all feels good, and they've got a big series coming up this weekend at Baton Rouge.
They're pretty good. Kevin Kopps is really, really good. All my buddies and I, we watch every pitch of every game, and we've talked about it quite a bit. And it's been mentioned in our circles that it's still, the guys say this, it still doesn't feel like we're number one. Like, are we really better than everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell them, well, you're beating everybody else. It may not feel like it, but what are they, like 9-1 against the top 15 or something ridiculous? And none of those games have been here at Baum Walker. It's pretty impressive. So while it may not feel like the pitching is up to par at times, man, they've just got so much depth there where, you can do a quick trigger on these guys.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not in it that day, DVH will pull them in a hurry and go on to the next one. So, and the way they're hitting right now, the offense is incredible. When you're leading the nation in home runs and walks, you're in a pretty good position. So just keep winning. It's a big one coming up this week. As we all know, down at LSU, they've always been tough on Arkansas, and should be another good one. LSU coming off a series win at Ole Miss, which I think a lot of Arkansas fans enjoyed, but you don't want them getting too hot because now you got to go down there.
And just to mention this, the midweek game on Tuesday against Missouri State was canceled. But
yeah, that's a bummer, man. That's always a fun series. Not sure DVH and Coach, is it Gutton up there? And pretty sure it's Gutton. I don't think they're best of friends, so I always enjoy that series.
Yeah, well, there's an interesting, Bobby Petrino. By the way, Bobby Petrino of Missouri State was named Missouri Valley Coach of the Year. Did you know that, Danny?
Yeah, I did know that.
2022, if he's still there, he'll return to Fayetteville. The next midweek game, you don't have one until Arkansas State on Tuesday, May 11th. So you've got weekend series against LSU this coming weekend. Then Georgia comes to Fayetteville on Friday, May 7th through the 9th. And then it's Tuesday with Arkansas State on May 11th.
It's been fun hitting all the in-state schools, man. It's good for everybody.
Whoops, popped up Keith Grayson there on accident. All right, Danny, you got anything else to add? We're going to let you go.
That's it, buddy.
All right, man.
Y'all have a good one.
All right, appreciate you, Danny. That's Danny West again. Follow him at Danny West at 247. No, just Danny West at 247. I keep saying I got to update that, and I never do. One day I will. It's the off season. It's time to do that kind of stuff, right? All right, appreciate you for joining us, Danny. Before we go to questions, I want to get to. It wouldn't be right to talk about all this transfer stuff without talking about the king of the transfer portal, the importer, Eric Musselman, and just the overall job that he's done. So I know we've talked about this a lot, so I just kind of want to review real quick. But Arkansas right now finds themselves on a lot of top 25 lists, including as high as number 5. I've seen them as high as number 5, and I think that's before Amude jumped on board. So on the 24/7 Sports one, they had it, I think, 16th, and then they redone it because there's been some commitments and some transfer additions. But Arkansas moved up 5 spots to 11th right now. So Chris Likes, I love Chris Likes. I mean, is he going to give some stuff up because of his height? He's only 5'7", probably. But man, he's going to be so electric. Like, he can get off a shot so quick. He's so fast. I think he's just going to be fun to watch. Stanley Amude, who was the most recent one, 21.6 points per game, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 6'6", 210, can play all over the floor. Almost 80% as a free throw shooter. What a great addition. Both of those guys. DC Tony, 6'6", 210, 14.4 points a game from Pitt, 5.9 rebounds, 2.3 assists. Those are solid numbers. A guy that can really flush it, a guy that can play a lot of different positions again. Kamani Johnson, 6'7", 215, who transferred in from Little Rock. I mean, he had to sit out last year, obviously. And then you got Abiami Iola, which, I mean, he had to sit out because of an injury. But, all those guys, and then you factor in KK Robinson coming on board, the guys that are getting a little bit older. Just a nice-looking team shaping up. Maybe it has to play a little bit, get together. That's going to be a fun team to watch, and hopefully the thing that kind of sucked about last year, obviously, is you never got to pack Bud Walton Arena. I mean, they would have tore that place apart sometimes. I mean, just blowing the roof off last season with the way the year went. You're talking about one sellout after another. Just couldn't have that. Hopefully with this group you get that, and they can experience Bud Walton Arena to its fullest. Before we get into your questions, I want to remind everybody, of course, there is plenty of ways to watch and listen. We are going to get to your questions today. I see them rolling up, so we're good to go on that front. If you haven't followed the page on Facebook, go ahead and take a minute and follow it. If you're watching on YouTube, throw us a like. Throw us a like on Facebook. Throw us a thumbs up on YouTube. And interact with the video, comment, share, all that kind of stuff. But subscribe to the channel on YouTube and hit the notifications bell right now if you haven't done so. Apple Podcast. When this video ends, just take a second and give us a 5-star review. It really helps us get our message out there to other Razorback fans. It helps move us up the top of the list when people are searching for Razorback content, all that kind of stuff. But also, it helps the grassroots. Share with your buddies. All right, we got a lot of Go Hogs and Woo Pig Sueys. Matt Bohannon says, Trey, what do you see from the new transfer market? Do you project him as a top 2 DT? I think Ridgeway is going to really push to start. I really do. I mean, he's just such a big addition. I mean, and Utsi, I'm getting my U names mixed up, but Markel, both of those guys, I think, have a real good chance to impact him. I mean, at the very minimum, the competition level has dramatically upticked. And that was a position that Sam Pittman has said repeatedly, this is what we need to get. After Takias Crawford, after they took care of, add another guy on the offensive line, I mean, this just made so much sense to add defensive tackles, and they got 2 of them. I don't feel like end was as big a need, even though they couldn't get to the quarterback last year. I still believe in the talent at defensive end for Arkansas. Defensive tackle, it's not that I didn't believe. It's just like they need more numbers, need more competition. They need some better players. They need all of that kind of stuff, and they absolutely just got that. I mean, they got a guy who started 7-8 games in the SEC last year, and another guy who was playing on a smaller school level, but was one of the more coveted transfers out there. Kevin Gill says if Mike hits the portal in January, then it's less reactionary. If Mike hits the portal in January, then it's less reactionary. Yeah, I mean, that again, you can be upset with Mike Woods entering the portal. Even with, going through the whole spring, did he take away reps from somebody else? Yes, he did, all of those types of things. Take coaching away, take time away, all that kind of stuff, yeah. I mean, that's what happens. But it happens all over the country. What's the status? What's the state of the D-line with 2 new guys? I think we pretty much covered that, Philip Doolin. If you're not satisfied, then say I'm not satisfied. Philip Mouton says Dorian Gerald should have a better season too. Absolutely. I think he's got a shot to be really good. Really good for him. Norman Hunt says, here's the deal with these transfers. It doesn't matter whether you're leaving or coming in. You still got to earn your spot. My point is the grass ain't always necessarily greener. It's absolutely true. We've seen that. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. Kevin Gill co-signs with what I said. Philip Mouton says, yep, sure did. Philip Mouton says, I hate Mike Woods left, but hey, we're going to be in good hands literally. I mean, we can talk about the wide receiver spot a little bit. I mean, Darren Turner's a guy that was maybe a little more raw, that has a ton of athletic ability, ton of potential. I think the hope has got to be that Ketron Jackson, I mean, he was the highest ranking recruit in the class. You got to hope that he lives up to that and is able to come in like Mike Woods did his freshman year, or like Traylon Burks did, or Trey Knox did his freshman year. He played with a brace on his knee all spring. He should be 100% good to go by the time the season starts here. But he was a very well-regarded recruit and a guy that looks like he has a ton of potential. Then you've got Trey Knox, who there's no other way to say, but Trey had a sophomore slump last year. He did. He has got a lot of potential, especially as a jump ball wide receiver. And there was actually times where I was like, hey, he's maybe a little faster than I'd given him credit for this spring. I saw him run away from Greg Brooks, who's pretty darn fast. I saw that happen in the spring. So, hopefully he comes along. You also got Devion Warren, who, Devion is missed the entire spring, but he had his best season last year. You got Jaquaylin Crawford, who I don't know if Jaquaylin came in and just set the world on fire this spring, but he's a talented guy that should be able to help them. So they've got some names. Jaden Wilson's another guy who maybe he's a year away or so, but I thought he was better than what I had anticipated him being in the spring as an early enrollee. Doyle Bulger says, any hope of getting a linebacker? Not on scholarship. They're done. I mean, they filled up with the count ahead. They could count 3 ahead. They filled up that. I mean, there's no more room for any more commitments or transfer additions. So at the linebacker position, Doyle, I think they're okay in 2021. They've got Grant Morgan. They've got Bumper Pool. Levi Draper, who missed all the spring. He's still coming back from an injury. Hayden Henry, who started for him in most practices but didn't play any of the scrimmages because he's trying to get his shoulder back 100% healthy. So you've got those 4 guys. Plus you got Andrew Parker, who started to come on a little bit last year. You've got some younger guys on the team, JT Towers, for example, Kellen Burrell. So you've got some guys, that hopefully this year in that younger group of players are going to start to emerge, because right now I look at it and say, wow, the top 4 guys are seniors. They could all be gone after this year. Now they, 2 of them get another year back if they want it, but 2 of them don't. So, you could be without your top 4 linebackers in 2022. But having said that, there will be some guys that start to emerge, hopefully for Arkansas this year. And if they don't, then you explore the option of, getting a grad transfer or a transfer. I guess anybody now is one-time waiver, but you explore that option next year. You can help your team a lot real quickly these days with not having to sit out any. Brian Malone says, what's your thought about our running back room? Running back room, I think that they have some potential. I wonder, is there a stud? Like, is there a guy that's like, no question, this is the guy to, it's 3rd and 2, we got to have this. Who's the guy? I don't know who that is just yet. And, Traylon Smith provides a lot. I think that the problem you can run into with a lighter back like him is it could be either feast or famine. He is a tough runner, but he's not huge. He's not a massive, the best running backs usually, and especially like if you look at like maybe the top 7 rushers last year, they're all going to go over 200 pounds, whether they're 5'9" or what. They're 200 something, 220, something like that. And they're also fast, generally. Big and fast. Not just maybe hulking, but really big, good size, 220, and fast. Probably average like 5'11", 220 is what I would guess. So does Arkansas have that back right now? Is Rocket Sanders going to be that back? He's not right now because he's not comfortable enough from what I've seen at running back. Now, when the ball's in his hands, looks pretty good running. 6'2", 220. Good, big, fast back. That's what it typically takes in the SEC to have a guy who can do a lot of things. And the thing with Rocket that's intriguing is he can catch the ball. He played wide receiver. So he's a threat catching the ball out of the backfield at 6'2", 220. You don't always see that with a guy that size at running back. He should be a guy that could run between the tackles. He's got speed to break away. He's an intriguing possibility. You also have A.J. Green coming in, and he missed the spring, but if he can run, he can come in and help. And he is a state champion 100-meter dash guy. He'll probably be about 200 pounds when he gets here, probably about 5'11", 6 foot, 200 pounds. So he's another guy that's a possibility. You also got Traylon Smith. You got Josh Oglesby, who's going to be more of a, how do we get this guy on the edge type of player. He's, probably south of 180 pounds. So he's not very big, but he's like a near world-class speed guy. And I've always said, as we were talking earlier, if you're going to be a running back in this conference and you're going to be undersized, you need to be electric fast. You're like a 4'3" guy. And he is that. So went on a long time about running backs, but I don't know. And I gotta leave it Dmacc Johnson because I thought Dmacc Johnson really had a nice spring. I thought he showed really good balance. I thought he looked like he's trimmed up a lot, even though he's still carrying 240. I mean, he did some things in the spring. He's like, this guy. I mean, he might be able to help him in short yardage. I'm not sure he's going to be a breakaway guy, but good balance. People bounce off of him when he doesn't even do anything. Lance Walker says maybe Ridgeway can be our Alabama's Cody, Mount Cody, yep. Kevin Gill says, Trey, I got kind of an odd question for you. Would Dmacc have had a longer NFL career at safety? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, 10 years is a long time in the NFL. I think that's how many years he played. So Dmacc actually spent one day in the safety room when he was at Arkansas. A lot of people don't know that. But the reason that Dmacc – so – he came in at running back. Everybody's like, he's got to play safety. You got Felix. You got Michael Smith, all this stuff. But Dmacc spent a day in a safety room at Arkansas, and the reason he didn't stay in that safety room, and I say maybe not the final reason, but Mike Smith got hurt. And so he went back over to running back, and that's the end of the story. it's hard to say anybody would have had a longer career than 10 years, but Darren did get hurt a lot. Maybe he would have had a better career. I mean, what did he have, 2 or 3 1,000-yard seasons? He just got banged up too much, got drafted by the Raiders, just wasn't a very strong organization at the time. The better question might be if he'd have got drafted by another team, would he have had a longer career? 10 years of running back is still phenomenal. Todd Drake says, who are our possible quarterback commits for 2022? We had Danny on. Probably should have asked him that, Todd, but again, you can read all that stuff. He recently released a big red board that's got a good list of all of that stuff. So proud of both baseball and softball teams. They're both legit, says Norman Hunt. Chris Light says Rover, Arkansas is here. Alex Ruppel says he would have if he didn't go to a Raiders dumpster fire. There we go. Great minds, Alex Ruppel. Steve Tracy says, not going to lie, I'm worried about quarterback position, throwing downfield. Burks need the ball 10-plus touches a game. You know, Steve, actually, I'm kind of the other way. I feel like KJ's going to throw a nice deep ball. We've seen it happen plenty of times. We saw it happen in the spring. We saw it happen against Missouri. I wonder about, the touch passes, the simple stuff over the middle. Like, is he going to be accurate? Because what we've seen with KJ from time to time is he will sail one. It's like, whoa. And I haven't seen it so much as of late, but he has had a tendency to sell stuff. And again, I think that goes back to a lot of reworking his mechanics and stuff. But I went into that spring game saying KJ is, probably going to have a really bad day. He's facing the number 1 defense, and he came out just blazing. I thought that was really encouraging. What you want to see in a spring is the defense really, in a sense, dominating the offense, because so much is about timing. That's what we saw, early on in the spring. A lot of KJ's deep balls are, flying past the wide receivers, going over their heads. Just the timing of it's just not quite there, which is another thing that hurts with Mike Woods because they work on timing all spring, But all of those things, but what you want to see is, like, towards the end, the offense start to win some more battles, and start really picking it up, because it is so much more about timing and just being on the same page with everybody. Defense is more reactionary, or, hey, this is a blitz, all that kind of stuff. So you would expect the defense to be a little farther ahead. Ruth Haynes Kinney says, is the transfer portal a permanent thing? Yes, the transfer portal. So you've always been able to transfer. The transfer portal just makes it a little cleaner for the student athletes. Like, puts them out there, says this guy's in the transfer portal, good to go on contacting, yada, yada, all that kind of stuff. He's recruitable now. So that's the main thing with the transfer portal. You've been able to do that before, but the thing that's changed dramatically with the transfer portal is the one-time transfer waiver. So as we're seeing right now, and I don't know if something's going to be written into letters of intent, because to me, the way this is going, like, we just saw Trey Alexander decommit from Auburn, basketball player. He signed with Auburn, and now he is transferring. So, like, you have a signing day, and does it mean anything? I mean, like, signing day is a pretty big deal. Like, because it used to be as a fan, you'd be like, got him. This guy is a Razorback. He's on board, yada, yada. He's on board. And now it's kind of like he signed, but now you got to make sure you keep him. Got to make sure he gets to campus, because he could enter the portal and free and clear transfer. So maybe something gets looked at with letters of intent. But I've said before that I'm not the biggest fan of the one-time transfer waiver unless it happens after 2 years. I think you should put 2 years in. If you're signed with somebody, that's a 2-year contract with them. Okay? That's a 2-year deal. And after 2 years, if it's not working out, you're not seeing an avenue for playing time, the coach is probably also fine with you transferring. It's not a perfect system. I just think that this adds way too much, because especially as freshmen, you talk to any college athlete, any of them. Maybe some of you are college athletes and you're listening right now. You wanted to transfer at some point. You're like, I'm done with this. This isn't what I thought, or the coach is mean to me now, or I'm homesick, or my girlfriend, something. At some point in that time, you thought about transferring. You did. So to me, give it the old college try. Give it a couple of years. And that's not going to change anything with, like, Mike Wood's situation or something. He's a grad transfer anyway. But to me, 2 years, you can transfer free and clear after that, as much as you want, even. So that's just kind of my thought. Philip Mooten says Jack Williams is going to have a breakout year this year. I got to agree with Danny West. Hey, I said that too, Philip. What about me? Alex Ruppel says base defense, 4 or 3 down linemen. I think it's a 3 just based on everything they do. But, I mean, base defense, all that means is, okay, this is how we're lining up when we're going against, 21 personnel. That's basically what it means. 2 running backs and a tight end, very traditional look. This is our defense, and then everything else bases, comes off of that base. But this is a little bit different. I mean, they got a 4-2-5 or they got a 3-2-6. I mean, I think it's pretty clear we're going to see one or the other of those defenses. So it doesn't matter, I guess, what we call it a base. I mean, I guess we'll see some bear front sometimes, mixed in, stuff like that, goal line package, all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, we're going to see this 4-2-5 or this 3-2-6. And really, is there a big need to have something else? Probably not if you got those two, aside from, maybe having a goal line package, short yardage. Maurice Norman says, I agree with you, Trey. Rick Dodson says, what do you think about special teams? I'm still worried about special teams for Arkansas. I don't know that I would say this guy's the kicker. I don't know that I would say this guy's the punter. And I definitely wouldn't say, this guy's the return guy. All of those things are still up for grabs. But what I like that Pittman did, and I think was important for this year after the year that they had on special teams, is they hit every single category in the spring. And you usually don't see that. Usually not able to do that because you rely on a lot of freshmen, incoming players to help you on special teams. But this year they had 10 scholarship seniors returning, not including guys like Sam Loy, who's a punter, who's on, walk-on. And they had 13 early enrollees altogether. So it made a lot of sense to work on special teams, but usually you just work on punt team, maybe field goal, because punt team's kind of the biggest deal for you, right? But I still saw kickoffs out of bounds. I think they're going to be good kicking the ball out, kicking the ball out of the end zone and into the end zone. But I wonder about the other stuff. It's not settled, but the work has been put in. Okay, we know that. So. Let's see. A lot of stuff just popped up. I was about to wrap it up, but we'll keep going. Cedric White says there's someone to challenge Hudson to start. I think Miles Slusher could. Now, we saw a little bit of Miles Slusher in the scrimmage in the red-white game. I think it was because of depth issues. Basically, one time I saw that, Trent Gordon was playing corner, and then they moved him to nickel, and then they moved Slusher to cornerback. But Slusher, I think, could possibly play corner and could possibly push him. Aside from that, I don't know that I would just say, this guy's going to knock Hudson Clark out. Richard Hartman says, which position groups seemed most improved throughout the spring, and happy for the number 8, but the timeline just all seemed awful fishy. And I think that's one reason that a lot of Razorback fans are kind of up in arms about it, just the timeline of it. But position group that's seen most improved, I felt like quarterback improved throughout the spring. Now, I can't say it's most improved because they lost a starter. Let's see. I mean, post-spring defensive line seemed pretty. I mean, defensive end, I think defensive end had a pretty good spring. I'll say defensive end. How about that? I'll say defensive end feel like the most improved group. Ruth Haynes Kenny says, me again, what do you think about the new overtime rules? Well, I like the way overtime was. So why are we making a rule to change that? I guess they're trying to shorten the game. I like more football. I hated back in 2006, was it? The year Arkansas won the Western Division. But they did all that stuff to shorten the game. Darren McFadden would have had a lot more yards. Darren might have won the Heisman if they hadn't shortened the game because it took away a certain amount of carries and stuff like that. And then they fixed it in 2007. But I don't know why you changed the overtime rules. And I feel like you could end up going a lot longer because you're just doing from the 2-yard line one play to get in the end zone. You're talking about exhausted teams. I don't know. I liked them the way they were. I was fine with going for 2 after the, third overtime, and now I think it's the second overtime. Is that what it is? And then after that, you just go 2-point conversion plays, so you got to switch back and forth. You keep getting 2-point conversion plays. Maybe you should run 3 2-point conversion plays while you're on the field and then have the other team run 3, and whoever wins it, maybe. I don't know, but I like the overtime the way it was. I don't know why we're changing that. And from what I've seen from reaction from fans, everybody feels the way that I feel on that. Like, why would you do this? It's exciting. It's fun. We love it. Dual Burger says, who's the fastest player on offense and defensive side? We finally have SEC speed. The fastest player on offense is Josh Oglesby, who is an All-American sprinter from the track team. The fastest player on defense, from what I've heard, is Ladarius Bishop. I mean, that's what the previous staff said anyway. Now, Sam Pittman also said if he had 6 furlongs, so he was talking horse racing Arkansas Derby, if he had 6 furlongs, then he was going to go with Oglesby. If he had 7, he was going to go with Burks, but also threw a nod in for Malik Hornsby, who's a quarterback. And if you saw anything from Malik Hornsby, is that guy has incredible speed for a quarterback. Like, maybe one of the fastest quarterbacks in the country. Dual Burger says, I just read that. Norman Hunt says, I always thought there should be an associate degree rule where you got to have that before you transfer. So associate degree would be what, 60% of your credit hours, I'm thinking like how junior college does, plus Comp 1 English and college algebra. I think those are the rules for at least transferring to Arkansas or maybe into the SEC. You got to have those. Can't transfer a D. Is that still a rule? Is it a D rule? I think this was Arkansas specific. I can't even remember if they've changed that or not. I haven't heard it in a while. But anyway, I don't disagree with that. I still kind of think maybe you just do it by on the field, 2 years. Case French Fulton, I mean, to stay eligible, you got to have, certain amount of credit hours too. So I don't know why we'd change that too much. Case French Fulton says the kickers did great last spring game. They actually did kick well in the spring. They didn't kick any long field goals. I think the longest was like 30-something yards. Casey French Fulton says, why worried? Experience on special teams? Just based on what happened last year. I did overall, I know what we saw in the spring game, but overall throughout the spring, so I witnessed probably about 50 minutes to an hour of 13 of the 15 practices. I think one got rained out. They closed one. They might have closed 2. I can't remember, but 12 or 13 of the practices I saw, including the entire red-white game, obviously, and rewatched it later. But throughout the course of it, I just wasn't like, wow, this guy is really booming the ball in punts, or these field goal kickers have been super consistent. But the main consistency thing that I saw that was a positive was just regularly going into the end zone on kickoffs. Vito Calvaruso, mainly. I like Turner as a return man. Nick Turner, I assume you mean. He's got some speed. Now, Nick Turner might be up there too. He's very fast. Maurice Norman says, don't be shocked when Arkansas gets 8 or more games this year. I've said before I could see 7 as a possibility. I mean, they won 3 SEC games last year. I think there's a pretty good assumption that they would have won 3 this past, 3 non-conference games, probably everybody but Notre Dame. And they do that again this year, then that's 6. It's bowl eligible. Can they catch Texas at home? Maybe. Texas has a new coach, new quarterback. Can they catch another SEC team? Maybe. They get Mississippi State at home, Auburn at home, Missouri at home, Texas A&M. Are they the home team for Texas A&M? I believe they are this year. So Arkansas is the home team in Arkansas. But they get 3, what I would think maybe are winnable, definitely winnable SEC home games this year. So pick one up on the road. Get that A&M game. Get Texas. Maybe they can get to 7 that way, and who knows. But I think I think they're going to probably surprise some people this year. Philip Mooten says, "Yep, I just said the same thing the other day. They've been working their hind parts off." Maurice Norman says, I agree with you. I agree with you, Maurice. Marquise Martin says, what's holding back Trey Knox from being top receiver in the SEC? From what I understand, there were some personal issues last year, too. He's also dealt with some injuries. And, just sometimes players slump. But from everything that I've seen, he has really put in the work. I expect a bounce back from Trey Knox. I'm not saying like he's going to be a premier receiver in the SEC, but I think he's going to tick up in a positive direction for Arkansas and be a key player for him. So, all right, everybody, we've gone an hour now. If you have not giving us a 5-star review, and you like this show on Apple Podcasts, please do so. We've not had anybody review the show, like get a write-up, like say, hey, this is what we like about the show. This is why you should like it. Since February, nobody said anything. So take a moment, if you don't mind, if you like the show that we do, and throw us a nice review on Apple Podcasts. Certainly helps get our message out there. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And, pretty much wrapped it up. If I go about an hour, I'm just like dead at the end because I've just been talking nonstop. So I can start to feel it in my voice. So I want to thank Danny West for joining us, all his insight on recruiting. If you haven't followed Danny, then do so at Danny West 24/7, and sign up at HawgSports.com. Just $1 right now for your first month at HawgSports.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in to Hog Sports Live. We will be back with you guys soon. All right, and when we did it.